Hello, everyone. Ooh, it's working. I have 7:30, so let's begin. We may have some folks coming in. I'll point out that we leave the door open for good ventilation, but if it gets noisy, anybody, feel free to close the door. We hate to be interrupted when we're trying to pay attention to our readers. Welcome. I'm Marg Walker, one of the co-hosts of the Midstream series. I'll be your host tonight. We have 4 wonderful readers that will take in turn. Each reader has about 15 minutes, and so we'll be convened for an hour plus, a little bit like that. After the session, you can, those that have books have brought them. I'm not sure I'm really picking up well here. Let me know if you need me to do better. Okay. All right. So there'll be some books. We invite you to stick around and look at the books that are here. You can buy them if you want, meet the readers and meet each other and have a little bit of an extended part of the evening. For those who haven't been here before or haven't needed to know this, there are restrooms down the hall. So if you exit the room and just go down the long hall, you'll run into a couple of them, and you can avail yourselves of those. I'm also going to pass around a sign-up sheet if you are not currently on the Midstream reading list and would like to be. I'll pass this out for you, and what we do is send out, we don't sell this to anyone, we don't do that sort of marketing, but we send out a couple of emails a month, both of them related to the reading that's coming up. So if you're interested in doing that, please sign up. I can tell I've had a really busy day. I'm like talking really fast, so let me just take a breath here. I want to thank Paul also, our techie guy who's recording tonight and who informed me that when the overhead lights are not on, what we get in the video recording is a lamp with a shadow of some anonymous reader. So that's why we've turned them on. It's a lot better lighting too, so we'll be better off with it. Thank you, Paul, for your work on this, behind the scenes to keep things going. It's customary to begin our readings on this series with a poem, and often one that the host has written. That's not what I'm doing tonight. I'm going to read a poem that I like from Bill Holm. I've been thinking about, the change of seasons and I have a little ambivalence about it. And so this is a poem that is not about ambivalence, but it is about a change. It's called Warm Spell. A long November warm spell, all the blizzards still asleep. Bees hum unbelieving around still blooming flowers. Leaves piled in compost heaps move around uneasily. The dried branch bends down in warm wind, inviting them home again. People who haven't spoken in years smile and greet each other in the street. Relatives forget old quarrels over family heirlooms. The town atheist admits that God exists. And the town drunk drinks coffee on his porch. The Lutheran minister forgets St. Paul, and the furrows vanish from around his mouth. Children are conceived in the open air under willow trees by the river. Like the life in the body, this cannot last. So everyone wastes time joyfully, not even remembering the old wounds they gave their spirit. The old man on the stoop in front of the beer joint remembers his first lover, and his toes begin dancing around inside his shoes. I love that guy. This is from, I'm not sure which collection, but it's in The Chain Letter of the Soul, which is a compendium of many of his books. So with that, I'd like to welcome our first reader to the podium. Sigi Leonhard grew up in Germany, came to the United States as an exchange student, and is still waiting to be exchanged back. Recently retired from teaching German at Carleton College, she finally has time to finish all her creative projects. She has published poems and short stories in anthologies, Absorb the Colors, Tremors Vibration Enough to Rearrange the Earth, Plain Songs, and magazines such as The Hungry Mind Review, Hunger Mountain, and Persimmon Tree. Her novel, Stimmen, was published in Germany in 2009. She is currently submitting for publication a book of poems called The Place Where You Swam First, and is finishing her play, Truth Serum. Besides writing, really, you have more time? She likes hanging out with her daughter, also a writer, gardening, spending time on a lake in Minnesota, and traveling. Welcome, Sigi.
Thank you.
Is this working? Is this working okay? All right.
You can get a little closer if you can.
Lift it. Yeah.
Okay. So since we're at a church, I thought I'd read a poem first that is about enlightenment. It's called Werner Johnson Provides Enlightenment. I shouldn't have been surprised when I found him on the tall ladder one spring day, leaning against the gutter and ripping out the maple saplings. After all, a chair I'd ordered and left unopened in its box had suddenly appeared, all assembled on the deck. That's Vern. And believe me, I'm not the only one he takes care of in the neighborhood. No, Vern walks the streets with problems on his mind that he can fix, and he will fix them. So I shouldn't have been surprised when I saw his face in the window of the ramshackle back door, and then the huge package with which he made off to the basement, mumbling, "It's too dark down here." I followed him down the narrow steps, yelling he should mind the low ceiling, but of course he knew my basement from other emergencies: dead mouse, broken window, frozen faucet. When I caught up with him, he had already opened the package with the special knife he'd brought and pulled out something that looked like a propeller of a small plane. He was huffing a bit as he climbed onto a chair and began mounting the three-pronged artifact to the ceiling. "Just too dark," he mumbled, then told me to turn on the light. And when I followed orders, as I do in these situations, a trinity of lights illuminated my lowly basement, like lightning that has decided to become permanent. And in the blinding light, once our eyes had recovered, I could see every crack in the walls, the plaster that had fallen and collected in small heaps. You could see the fallen state of the world, of my world in particular. Spider webs and the blue bucket, the dusty lawn chairs and the paint cans, I swear every fall to recycle. And the lone centipede we watched as it ran in fear of the Lord who had said, "Let there be light." And Vern saw that it was good. He still stood high on his chair. "There you go," he laughed, pleased with the light and the work of his hands. And I said what people say when a miracle occurs, when they receive instant enlightenment, when light floods the earth like on the first day of creation. I said, "Wow." Thank you. So I feel really sad this time of year because summer is over, and even if it's sometimes too hot, it's still wonderful. So I want to read a few poems that take place in the summer, even if they're not directly about summer. This one's called "The Night We Made Pesto." Of course, the car windows were down, my feet on the dashboard naked, the rest of us almost naked because it was over 90 and the air conditioning didn't work on this steamy summer evening. Many complained about the heat, but what's the gripe about? The days are long, the mornings full of glory, with a golden light streaming in from the east, flooding the city, and people are out in the streets until dark and beyond, at pools and little lakes, and we on our way to the movies. At Cedar, we drive into an overpowering scent of basil, and then we see the rusty truck with a field's worth of green. The brakes screech. "Let's make pesto," my guy says. We jump out, and he walks towards the bearded hippie who recognizes him. "How you doing, man?" And they laugh. They nudge each other into the sides of their Hawaiian shirts. They reminisce and laugh about their past adventures. The movie is forgotten. We stand until sweat forms on our foreheads, and he buys half the truck's basil, so the dude can close shop and come with us to the bar that is our new destination, the edgy place with a patio where the chairs don't match and the tables are rickety, so you better hold on to your drink. "Yes," the dude says, "that's just the right place for a night like this." And when we've cruised down Cedar and found a place to park and sit down, someone says, "What's that smell?" And the two guys point at the truck and the car, sources of the emanation, and everyone laughs, and because it's late and tomorrow is another day, We hand out bouquets of basil as if it were everyone's birthday. It's a basil orgy out there, and the people who haven't gotten any raise their hands. It turns out people love basil. And we keep passing out the green bouquets as the sun sets slowly over the park, bathing everyone and their basil in that golden, dusty light. Some of you can probably figure out what joint that was and where it was exactly. Okay, then here's another summer poem. Every summer has a night that drifts into mystery. Under the silver maple, no stars out yet and no mosquitoes, the air moist and so warm you want to take off your clothes and run as fast as your lungs permit and your muscles. Summer breeze brushing your body that is perfect as in its first moments. The crickets chirp, and whether you're the ant or the grasshopper, this summer night is yours. When you love someone, you must go to the place where she was born and spend first summers. Feel the echo of her astonished gaze at sky and stars. First river, first lake. You have to feel how the soft grasses kissed her feet. Walk with her to the ice cream store, her first school, or the barn where terrible things happened. And even though all this was long ago and magic's not available upon request, each summer has its perfect night, blessed by perhaps no more than the evening's breeze that carries words of birds and news of wood fires, the rustle of the white cat on the prowl, and your love telling you what it was like when all was new and the sky above endless. So I wrote this book I'm trying to publish. I wrote it about having a child, raising a child, what it means to have a child in this crazy world. And I always felt a little uncomfortable reading them because I thought, oh, it's so private. And then a while ago, a male fellow poet wrote a book all about family and children. And I thought, oh, okay. So here are some of mine. This one's called Yellow Lions. Summers we live on the deck. I carry the creaky table under the canopy of the maple. The holes in the planks are covered with flower pots, so nobody's foot disappears like last year when Grace got stuck. But who wears heels on a deck anyway? The cedar speaks of green years in the forest. The child gets to work. Soon, lions strut across the deck in chalky, fierce yellow. They shake their manes. How fast they multiply. Babies curl up next to their mothers, and the older males roar with jaws frightfully able, jaws so wide the world may disappear in them. The child roars back, lion-hearted, stomping her barefoot. The coffee trembles in my cup as the creator sings jingle bells at the top of her voice. A neighbor's curtain moves slightly, a pair of eyes visible for a split second. Some of the lions have huge breasts like those of the Barbies inside that have fallen into disgrace. It's lions now, 7, then 8, 10 lions. The deck won't hold them all. And now a line of determined felines is marching towards the steps, down, down into the garden, where the zinnias parade in competition and the flocks stand guard. I wish for nothing. The paper is full of atrocities. How lucky she doesn't read yet. But Eden will last us only another year. Then what? How to explain the world? So here's the last one about child. Oh, there's a reference to the lint compartment. That's another poem about a relationship, which I'm not reading. It's called Arms. The first pictures she drew, herself as princess, mommy, daddy, in quick, bold strokes. I didn't notice that they had no arms. Time went by. By chance I read, the child who won't draw arms and legs suffers from lack of confidence. I wondered. She turned 4, her pictures more elaborate, kings and queens in their castles, smiles, a frown, closed eyes for sleep, no arms. What was I doing wrong? Surely the lint compartment conversations had leaked a poison into her life. Why does your princess not have arms? She does, she said, indignant. They are behind her back. Why would the princess do that? She looked at me as if I were dense, because she wants to. Next day there was a princess with real arms. They looked like those of a gorilla and reached all the way to her feet, flanking her fluffy pink dress. This princess stood stooped over. Her gigantic arms pulled her down, even her hands, enormous fingers like garden rakes. She shoved the sheet across the table. Here's your princess with arms. That afternoon, I dropped the books on child development at the Goodwill. We went out for ice cream. 2 huge cones of vanilla topped with chocolate crumbles, which she wiped from her cheeks with small, very dexterous fingers. I don't want to go over time, so what?
You're fine.
Yeah, okay. So one more.
Close
to the mic, okay. One more about the kid. 13. We drove down Grand, flanked majestically by lights, as if we were royalty coming to visit our lowly town. Bright plastic Christmas stars hung from the trees, strings of lights illuminated front porches, and the snow cooperated, glittering like fairy dust. She was humming to herself, excited about her first invitation to a birthday party at a pizza place. She was all made up, her shiny earrings the size of saucers dangling over her perfect jawline. Thick mascara, lip gloss, a perfume I recognized as mine, wafted over from the passenger seat in the almost dark car. Coat open over a flimsy shirt so tight you could see the outline of her bra. I'll wait until you found your friends, I said, only because it is so cold. She opened the door. Okay, Mom, she said with the exasperation she owed to her 13 springs, and I watched as she jumped up the few stairs and flung the door open. I saw her as someone else might, through the enormous glass windows as if on a TV screen. She laughed with the waiter, then turned and waved at me with her big kid grin until I waved back, then followed the waiter into the next room on her high heels, swaying only a little. So here's my COVID poem. Everybody writes a COVID poem, but it made me turn to outer space. So there was a message from XPR003 intercepted by Sigi, January 20th, 2022. Hello humans, we chat in peace, no bad word, no harm to body systems, pinky promised. Our attentiveness comes to this, you with this virus, multifaceted harm mostly to breathing systems. Yes, no, Marg 1. Hence, people in square buildings, square cells with high head output make small liquid, powerful protectant. Hurrah, humans, very good. But mistakes. We talk in peace, no harm insult to thinking systems. We too, multitudinous mistakes. But we have this head output for you. Why not all humans want life? Why not all humans on the board of this body system helper ship? Exclamation mark. This a big head scratcher of the first order. Also no understanding some entities refuse little cloth piece over breathing organ output machine. Cloth so little, maybe damage so big. This head scratcher of second order, please explain. We can help? Yes, no, Mark 1. We see you, interesting kind. Much head output, culture, hurrah, humans. Good breathing organ output, Aretha Franklin, Bruce Springsteen, wow. Cute sometimes, like Instagram top likes for small jumpers with tails. Our wrap-up request, you send update head output to your peace chat friend entities from XPR003. Yes, no, Mark 1. So I wrote a poem about my dad. He's having a birthday in 3 days, and you can figure out how old he'll be. It's called Prospects for My Dad, born 1930 in Berlin, Germany. Should reincarnation turn out to be what happens after the lights go out, rather than, say, an entropic glimmer of scattered atoms, or permanent residence above the clouds in a gated community for those who have, in some inscrutable logbook, done good? If it turns out to be reincarnation, may the gods reboot my dad as a cat, because he has been a good man, and life in the order of felines would be his heaven's heaven. Vows of silence, tenacity, sitting zazen at the window, a bowl of food offered without fuss. But wait, isn't he already a cat? Taciturn, solitary, terminally independent, as you get when you've walked to school in the rubble of shrapnel, stepped over dead bodies as if they were mice. Is he not already a cat in disguise, content with a good meal, nature programs on TV, and an incurable distrust of humans, distrust that gets confirmed daily when he watches the news, then turns to a program on lions? Okay, so let's see, what else do I have? Has anybody seen the Barbie film?
Yes.
What did you think? Oh, I guess I should.
Loved it.
Loved it?
Yeah.
Loved it?
Oh, yeah.
It made me think of a Barbie poem I wrote, so I think I'm going to read the Barbie poem.
Oh, yeah.
Although some of you know it. It's called Bastille Days for the Barbies. When I rip off the duct tape, it all comes back. The kids making off to a damp basement room newly dubbed The Club, adults not admitted. With the Barbies came secrecy, came the need for bras and miniskirts and shirts so flimsy they fell apart after a few months. With the Barbies came Kens, but only two for an army of girls, as if they were roosters, as if Barbies beget Barbies mostly. The occasional Ken hardly counted, though with Ken came the Jeep and the Hawaiian shirts and the monochrome male paraphernalia. The Kens begat very little besides the Jeep, while the Barbies spilled out in the rooms and begat mini purses and plastic heels on which we slipped on the living room floor, and countless combs they needed for their big hair that they combed compulsively, perhaps for the two Kens, but I suspect it was all about the company of Barbies, begetting more Barbies, and girls trying to make themselves in their image, with miniskirts and purses and long gloves and hairbrushes and dryers, the accoutrements of women crazed about freezing themselves into image and armor. I should go on with the cleanup, but the Barbies are compelling in a way they weren't back when I gave up and let them beget each other on the living room floor, while pointing out that appearances don't matter. The heat is everywhere now, even on the breezy porch where I carry the boxes. When the roofers come at 6 a.m., the attic must be empty, but the Barbies beckon. I throw 3 ice cubes in the leftover coffee and carry it outside. The second box, more Barbies. Why did I fail to put an end to this insanity? The zombies are still begetting each other and their stuff, a horse, a tent, and underneath a Barbie decapitated. This is no accident. Another headless creature without arms, and now brutality begets brutality, pins in a Barbie's ears, a girl with twisted legs, Ken's head on girl, more heads, heads all the way down, bowling balls with weird hair, smiling but untethered. More pins in orifices. Was it revenge, mutiny, self-hate? I root for mutiny. I want the kids to have revolted. Off to the Bastille. Let those heads roll. So I have one more. Is one more okay? This is called The Day I Envied the Cows. Around a bend on the highway, on the hillside, suddenly the cows. Large bodies parallel to each other as if posing for a picture, all looking in the same direction. The prairie grass, withered to September white, trembled in the breeze in sync with a fuzz inside their ears. Could it be that they all lifted their heads slightly into the wind as if to taste it, to sense the possibility of adventure out here on the prairie? That they greeted the luminous day rising above their field? What do we know of the cows except for their milk and their flesh when we need it? Cow consciousness. It never seemed more obvious than that day on the highway, when I looked at them with envy, then drove on into town to a job, a desk, a purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigi. That was wonderful. I look forward to when your book is published and we can all read the whole thing multiple times. Our next reader tonight, excuse me, is Kim Allen Chapman. He studied biology and ecology at Kalamazoo College in Western Michigan and at the University of Minnesota. For many years, he worked for the Nature Conservancy and then at an ecological restoration firm. He's been writing poetry since college. He is co-author of Valley of Grass, a book about the tallgrass prairie in the Red River Valley, and with poet Jim Armstrong, Nature, Culture, and Two Friends Talking, a book of environmental essays. Please welcome Kim Chapman.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really enjoying myself so far. Those were some marvelous poems. So I write a lot about things that happen to me, experiences that I have. And this is one of those. Man raking shoulder. Somewhere north of Winona, on a straight stretch of US 61, with few cars, if any, this early in the morning, a man in a red stocking cap rakes the shoulder at the edge of the road. He is intent, hard at it, head bent, eyes down, shoulders swinging rhythmically. The tines strike the ground and something happens, though it's hard to say what. Then the rake springs, flinging an invisible something past the verge into the weeds, cleaning the speckled asphalt of what is hardly noticed. Beside him, the wide river runs, the pinnacle bluffs, topped by vestigial prairie of coppergrass and gray boulders, catch the low clouds and shred them. But he is focused on his task, that from a distance, that from a passing car, cannot be understood, cannot even be known, may not be worth knowing. He is the solemn steward attending a reach of highway that begins in ice and leads to Mardi Gras. He is a man alone at work, maybe important, maybe not. It is his work. He is doing something. And in a minute or two, he will stop, survey his progress, call it good, walk home, and eat his immensely satisfying breakfast. Another thing that happened to me once. I read a lot about things that happened to me, like most poets. It's called Storm. From here I can see the small bubble of that moment riding the storm. The slicing splash of tires on the road, sluicing the rain aside, the cold rain and warm air pressing my shirt flat against my chest, my arms stinging with the sharp bead of the drops, while all around the thunder's roar, the flashes in the clouds, the trees whipped and beaten like prisoners in the tumult, until the notion dawns that a lightning strike in a whirling oak is too close, electrifying my life with danger. I ride even faster, striving to keep up with the front, the calamitous noise, waves of wind, and all that signals strength and certainty of ungoverned action. Then the road turns, and I run at angles to the storm path, lose the heedless racing spirit as youth becomes a man, and slacking my pace, watch the hull of excited dark sail away on the wind. I didn't want to grow up, but I had to. So another one. This involves my wife, who is in the back row there. It's called Wind Journey. Out on the lake, the traveling lake, swept clean by the wind, foam lines like windrows of the wind's leavings point the way for us to paddle. We copy its direction and enjoy and ease, despite the waves and lash of a spitting breeze on our faces. The kids lie down like caterpillars, curled around each other's limbs, as if to pupate in the rocking hull. They drift and doze in the canoe, out of the wind, hearing wave lap, paddle splash, and a loon call. My children feel the water push against them, hear its heavy sigh resting on its wrinkled back, light as a leaf or twig, organic, carried shore to shore with gentle certainty. Later there will come a cedar root or shelf of granite to cling to. For now, this rocking time is your world, your mother and father happy, guiding it, content in passage, needing your ballast for our journey. Sometimes I write about things I read in the newspaper or I see on here on the radio. This is one of those. It actually happens a lot more often than you'd think it would happen. This is called Ice Voyage. Moving away like a freighter, its harness broken, an ice floe drifts, 200 souls on board. A maw of water breaks into smile along the coast. Lake Erie's chilling blue swirls in deep pools, and eddies of slush tangle in the wake. The ones who stayed behind stand staring, mouths bobbing like tiny garage doors moving, arms swinging with white palms hung high as lanterns signaling the safe shore. When the truth dawns on the ice block, some run forward to the brink and stand among the coolers and gear shouting, "Do you have the keys?" as they feel the distance grow. Behind them, the fishermen stand by their ice holes, lines unmoved but trembling in the moment's wild composure. So here's another one that happened to me, and it's a true story. It's called Race with Turtle. How many of you have ever tried to get a turtle from one side of the road to the other? Yeah. There you go. Okay, there's many of us out there. Okay, this is Race with Turtle. A quarter mile ahead on the interstate, a gray hump sits on the dashed line at the center of the southbound lanes. Somewhere up around White Bear Lake, a female Blandings turtle takes a chance. Insane is the word that comes to mind, or biological imperative, which is much the same thing. Consider the urgent mantis losing his head over making copies of himself with her, his undoing. Or turtle, her impulse large as time, colliding with the freight train of us. Lucky for her, it's me at 80 miles an hour, a sentimental goop who wants to keep a few other species in the neighborhood for selfish reasons, to entertain me, or maybe replace me if the vast consuming enterprise of humanity doesn't work out, or, what the heck, even to let God amuse himself by populating the planet with oddball freaks of nature, such as this turtle here, with its banana yellow throat, long life, and silly annual pilgrimage of hope. 10 seconds later, I'm running back to her against the vortex of semis and all manner of fast cars. Unbelievably, she stays still, head stretched to the limit, watching the traffic. In a break, I dash and grab her. Her head tucks into the turtleneck. I use the word in its exact sense. And I carry her across 3 lanes to where she was going. Picture it, a madman in an egg race, holding what seems a gray bowler hat, legging it to safety, in love with a turtle. Okay, so I saw this in the Wichita airport. Greeting. The two sisters, I suppose, come arms outstretched in hurried pace from the corners of their universe and meet on the sidewalk of the Wichita airport. Embrace as long as welcome will allow, then part and stand, gesticulating and undoubtedly, though I cannot hear, saying, "You look so good. It's been so long. I cannot wait to tell you." And turning, briskly go, paired in steps and arm swings to the parked car in the sun-soaked parking lot. And did I say they wore bonnets and the old-style summer dress of a pale blue pattern on that comfortable white? All which signals to the world, to me watching them, there is nothing so old nor so natural as greeting whom you love after too long an absence. So I write political, or socio-political, economic poems from time to time, but those are really hard to write, and they're usually really bad. So I try to get to them obliquely, and so this is one of those oblique socio-economic political poems. It's called, oh, and I'll just say that my friend Jim Armstrong, he's a poet down in Winona, he kind of didn't think the ending ends right, so maybe, I disagreed with him, but maybe one of you could tell me what's not working in that last paragraph and explain it to me, and maybe I need to fix it, I don't know. So, money talking. I saw a corporation on the street, money at its mouth, talking. I mean, the money talked, protected by the court. The corporation wore a suit, of course. It was dark blue, the current style, with a red tie and brown shoes. It, or more correctly, he, stopped at the corner waiting for the light. He was big, the corporation, bigger than most. I assume his children were also large, engendered as they were from his bigness. He was talking at the corner, money at his mouth, like autumn leaves in a cloud floating. The leaves blew here and there in the gentle wind, to where they would do their work, decomposing in the soft humus of our democracy, making fertile ground for something.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of bummed out when the Supreme Court said that corporations are now people. I thought that was a weird ruling, almost as weird as Plessy versus Ferguson and all the other bad decisions they've made over the years. Okay, last one. So this is about my mother, and she said some hilarious things in her lifetime, and in the last year or two before she passed away, she said even more hilarious things. For instance, when we were saying goodbye at Thanksgiving, my son-in-law and daughter who live in California were hugging her and saying goodbye, and she looked at Ethan right in the face and said, "Well, if you come back and I'm not here, you'll know why." Okay, so that's my mom. Yeah, and so this was another wonderful quote by her in the last couple of years of her life. "I don't want to miss anything." It's called Horizon. This is the poem I could not write, the one I spent a lifetime drawing inspiration for. From the corner lamp in the dark room that put my mother's young face half in shadow, half in light, that side smiling, as she replied, "Yes, I will die, as all things must." From that to the sky last night that gently dropped its snow, each flake a tiny glowing lantern in the streetlight's beam, and all the years between. I suppose she meant the rhododendrons, globed with springtime saffron and pink, and very likely the calls and visits from friends and strangers coming at any hour, asking for advice or help, or just to chat. She might have meant the disputed presidential vote, or maybe grandkids. Would the searching one find a career at last, and the other graduate and the rest move closer to home? There is the chance she only meant sitting on a bench in Lakeshore Park on Chicago Avenue saying, "Good morning," to passers-by. And one stops, a man in a brown overcoat, to smile and answer, "I'm doing fine this morning, and aren't you looking well?" "Yes, I'm here with my children, enjoying the sun. It's been a cold spring." And as they exchange pleasantries, pleasant being the operative word here, a little sailboat just off Navy Pier, its trim white sail, taut in the steady wind, is bearing northeast away from harbor, into the great sea, and eventually no sign of land, just water, sky, and horizon, beyond which something surprising waits to be discovered.
Thank you, Kim. Our next reader is Robert Grunst. How do you say that? Grunst? Grunst?
I've heard it all sorts of
I'm
ways.
sure you have.
Some I'd rather not hear, that was fine.
All right. Robert has worked in a spectrum of fields. Pickle dipping in the employ of the largest pickling packing operation in the world, H.J. Heinz in Holland, Michigan. Unloading boxcars, burnishing and brushing for GE, teaching ninth grade English, serving as a deckhand and engineer aboard Great Lakes gillnet tugs, acquiring dexterities, setting, clearing, and mending net, all leading to his current status as Professor Emeritus, the English Department at St. Catherine University. He is the author, most people don't have to do all that on their resume, but apparently that was appealing. He is the author of 2 collections of poetry, The Smallest Bird in North America and Blue Orange, McGovern Prize, Ashland Poetry Press, and poems Wide and Far, most recently in Kestrel, Notre Dame Review, Poetry East, Tar River Poetry, and Waterstone. In addition, he backpacks in the Alps and the Pyrenees. Welcome, Robert.
First of all, I want to thank Marg Walker and this congregation for keeping this reading series alive. Also, I'd like to thank Richard Terrell, who was another one of the organizers of this series. And thank you, too, for being here, because if you weren't, it wouldn't make a bit of sense, would it? I remember a poetry reading at Kalamazoo College in 1968 that was organized by a wonderful poet by the name of, now I'm going to fit, thank you, Conrad Hilberry. And he invited wonderful poet Galway Cannell to read that night, and I had never heard of him. And I only knew Conrad Hilberry a little bit because I too was a student at Western, and my teacher there said, "Go over and listen to that guy read." And among other things, I remember beside his reading a famous poem now about the bear, was he read a poem about a vacuum cleaner salesman coming to do a sale thing, sweeping sheets and stuff like that. And he used the word desquamations. And I remember, what in the hell what's that mean? And of course I went home and looked it up. And I remember his saying, one of the jobs of a poet is to keep the language alive and keep words from dropping out of this world. And I do a little of that myself. Anyway, thanks again for being here. Here's a poem called Ars Poetica. How do I think poetry works, I guess would be a translation. Perhaps someone's crouching in the field toward which the fox is running, streaking across a meadow not far below Roncesvalles Pass, the Pyrenees, backgrounded by a long spine of lichened silvered stones, hedgeline, orange flash and blur. Could be the man is peering through a tripod mounted scope, one arm crossing his drawn up legs, the other flung back for balance, or he's nothing but a pile of rocks, half jacketed in weathered vines. Perspective odd, sight lines, angle of the sun have crafted into the motives of a man. And if the fox is not a fox fits into this space and time, this state of mind, elusive, ramping up speed, chasing some faint, shape-shifting scent. As Marg mentioned, my twin daughters, my partner, Sue, in the past have done a lot of backpacking in the Alps and the Pyrenees, largely because the daughters were living in France and Belgium, so it was easy to go, inexpensive. And this is a poem that comes after or from a little excursion in the south of Spain. Keep track of time here. Solitary ostrich above the Costa to Sol. That she lives her days out in a chain-link cage above Campetta confounds understanding. A 15 by 15 foot concrete slab measures her confinement. The slab slick with waste, rank green, redolent. Back and forth she sways, shifting her weight at her hips. We can see that cataracts afflict her. Here from the terraced hills all day, dogs barking for the usual reasons, to insult each other in good or bad humor, to shout down the magpies, scatter the lizards, to hone still sharper the prodigal's headache, condemn the kid with the slingshot. The ostrich's basin of water is putrid. Sunrise, sunset, an eclipse, an oracular comet, such utter estrangement. Declawed, might-riven, flightless, this outsized bird swaying with her outsized measure of animal sorrows on the old Roman way to Cantilis de Abida. Swaying, neurotic, carried off in her trance like dancing, as if she would rise free of matter to merge with the barking that rapturous frenzy, cursing and laughing, slipped buckles and collars, chains broken, ropes gnawed, snapping, wild flights through the alleys. Couldn't really leave the ostrich in that condition. I've written a lot of bird poems. This is one called Bird Augury, and epigraph from the Odyssey early on. What does it say here? You have book 2. Bird life aplenty is found in the sunny air, not all of it significant. Here's the waxy imprint of a pigeon having careened into a plate glass window at a stairway landing above Hotel Vikram's mezzanine, New Delhi. Lapat Nagar's metro station draped in city smog above. Looming overhead, oops, I blew that. Somewhere nearby there must be a peepal tree. Or see through a window anywhere you might be the sign of some other bird's collision with itself. There's Narcissus, or see your own reflection there. Here no other predator is in sight. No kite that might have given chase. There's no ripped open pigeon wreck atop the hotel portico to see, though 2 fully open pigeon wings are printed against the dirty pane, flight control having compensated too late for the mistake. Here's the outline of 1 foot, twisted toes and claws, 1 leg, an ankle knot. There's a trace of blood, a frazzled mineo of 1 pigeon eye. There is the keratin on suit foreshadowed figure of a cry, compounding the bird's impact distorted beak, an echo etched across the outer pane. One of the nuttiest backpacking trips we took was in the Italian Alps, way north, above the Susa Valley. It was contested country during both wars, World War I and World War II. Way up in the mountains, there were fortifications, and that's something you see when you go through that country. Machine gun nests and observation points, haunting. This one's called Once Red Fox, epigraph to locate anybody that needs to be located on a map. Vallon de Sea, etc., Italy, 1,500 meters. By lichen-speckled stone walls, granario, finale, that means farm buildings, hayloft above the pens, flagstone slab roof still shedding weather by the tilt of the valley, by the slant of all that's abandoned, the gutter trough having the floor halves tipped to channel waste to the cistern, by no animal moaning, no hot streams of urine, no tinge of ammonia, by silence, no swollen udders, no scent of milk oozing, no lantern jets hissing, no scent of city-bought perfume, the daughter who ran off to Torino, no goats nattering in their pen, no man urging a cow into its stanchions, no wife whispering her rosary, no pails, no bale tweeting, no muck-heavy boot suck. What fixes me in place is the long dead fox, a time-riddled mummy, curled atop a long dried out heap of manure. Her black flews frazzle loose from her jaws, teeth worn dull and splintered. Here is the pick bare shaft of her tail for goldfinches, swallows, or swifts. Here are the torn purses of her ears. No more reception. The dried out tuners within. Malleus incus staples, those are the names of bones. All the red breeze of her flown, as starvation, strychnine, tuberculosis, decades after combatants plotted out fire lines and fought over this valley, scoped and squeezed off shots at each other's positions. Ethmoid, spheroid, zygomatic, frontal, maxilla, lacrimal, these are also bones of the eyes now. Gilway Canal. These empty cups balance the eyes of the most patient sentinel keeping watch over the precincts of always and ever. Outside there's blooming and buzzing, and what finer prospect could she ask for? The meadow chest high and thistles, down valley gusts, tearing streaks of pollen from the crowns, quick clipped preces of chases she would run. I'm still all right with time? One more. Okay. In that case, I will go to one I promised my friend John Dwyer I would read. Chemist emeritus from St. Kate's. And he helped me understand the physics a little bit that I was trying to figure out here. So, for John. And thank you, John. Blue aster seeds. You might mistake the swarming motes you see for gnats gravitating around your face. Dizzy insect gyring, quarter against the sun, reduce the glare you see. They must be aster seeds. Puffs of wind gleaming through dried out flower heads. Flights of umbrels lifting off, each umbral haloed with fine filaments, stems below, terminating in the counterweight, which is the aster seed. Interstitial to the emptiness defining everything. If not for the air's viscosity, the flower's umbrels could not float and twirl, rise and fall, transporting the seed. There's drag and drift, and there are the physicist's vortex rings, hypotheticals you cannot see, counterpoints to gravity that animate such flights of seeds. Buoyancy, a breeze, calm, and turbulence synthesized. Two opposites unite. So umbrels and their seeds go whirling around the hypothesis, generating flow that holds the seed aloft. Or say it's sorcery, or where mechanics are incomprehensible. With luck, one seed in 50's apt to germinate. What's essential is that the gnats, which are not gnats, go on sparkling adrift, adroit, quavering specks, hieroglyphics, scattering back and forth across the glacial plain, the quaking bog, beyond terms for making sense of them, showers of metaphors, vortex rings, lapis, azurite, starflowers, asterisks, asteroids. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And I'll say we've had already this evening in our first three readers an example of what I love about this series that I've been attending for years off and on, and that is that the readers that come to us and that share their work with us are so different from one another. It's a really rich, I feel like a really rich evening to hear lots of different ways of putting words to the page. So thank you, 3. And before our final reader, I want to just thank Unity Church also. Midstream is an independent group, and Unity has offered its space to us generously at no cost. So we always, it being a church, pass a little offering basket, and for those of you who still actually carry cash, if you have a little bit you'd like to drop in the basket, that would be great to show our thanks for them. And thank you. Elizabeth, Jarrett, Andrew. I don't know what you're going to read, but Elizabeth writes in a lot of different genres, so we'll see. She's the author of Swinging on the Garden Gate, a memoir of bisexuality and spirit, now in its 2nd edition. The novel Hannah Delivered, a collection of personal essays on the threshold, home, hardwood, and holiness, and 2 books on writing, Living Revision, A Writer's Craft as Spiritual Practice, which was winner of the Silver Nautilus Award, and Writing the Sacred Journey, The Art and Practice of Spiritual Memoir. She is a founding member of the Eye of the Heart Center, where she teaches and coaches writers in book development. She's a recipient of 2 Minnesota State Arts Board Artist Fellowships, the Loft Career Initiative Grant, and is a Minnesota Book Awards finalist. She lives in Minneapolis with her wife, daughter, and 2 rambunctious cats. Welcome to Elizabeth.
Thanks so much for having me here. I was going to read to you from my memoir, and at the last minute I changed course. I'm going to read you a couple of more recent essays that have been published in small journals. So the first is called The Calculus of Awe. What's calculus? Gwen asks over dinner. 4th grade awakened in our daughter a love of numbers, exponents, factorials, variables, and other mathematical terms I hadn't used since high school. They became a regular part of conversations. Despite the fact that both Emily and I took calculus, neither of us could answer Gwen. I had promptly forgotten everything once I took the AP test, and Emily was tongue-tied because how do you explain calculus to a 10-year-old? It has to do with measuring amounts that change over time, like a car picking up speed, Emily tried. Maybe? A week later, we were at church preparing to serve a free meal. Tables were set with paper placemats, folded napkins, silverware, glasses. The room smelled of baked ziti and garlic bread. While waiting for the crowds to descend, we struck up a conversation with our pastor, Paula, a white-haired, mischief-loving lesbian. Gwen has 2 moms steeped in feminist, earth-centered spiritual work who wake up early to read books of incarnational mysticism as though they're thriller novels. She's only ever had female pastors and attended liberal congregations committed to radical social justice, evidenced tonight by feeding the homeless. And yet, this stubborn child thinks of pastors as men who wear gaudy rings and fancy robes to preach about God's wrath. She has absorbed Christian stereotypes by osmosis. God, she insists, is a bearded white dude in the sky. She doesn't believe in him, and who can blame her? Sometimes, though, I worry that she, with the rest of the culture, will throw the baby of faith out with the bathwater. So I asked Paula for help. Oh, God's just another name for love, Paula says to Gwen. What makes you think God's a he? Gwen shrugged. What about nature? Emily tried. God's the force of life coming up through trees. Gwen glanced toward the side table where she'd stashed her bags. Can I just go do some math? She asked. Math? Paula asked, surprised. You like math? A smile broke out on Gwen's freckled face. That's great, Paula said. I did too when I was your age, but somewhere along the line I got stuck, and my relationship with math stopped growing. I wish that hadn't happened. I knew what she meant. In grade school, arithmetic's certainty thrilled me. I felt appreciation for the symmetry of algebra and geometry's elegance in 9th and 10th grades, but by trigonometry, the drudgery of memorizing formulas and plugging in numbers eclipsed math's internal life. If every math problem had a solution, and solutions were all my teachers seemed to want, where was the mystery? What did math contribute to human relationships, meaning-making, or story? After turning in the bubble sheet for the calculus exam, I abandoned math entirely for disciplines more suited to my narrative inclinations. My closest friend in college, however, was a genius who had started undergrad math at age 11 and lived, breathed, and dreamt it. To hear Heather talk, you'd guess math is a game people play to uncover secret metaphysics. At her thesis defense, Heather bounced in front of a coordinate grid, mapping something that looked like a sideways tree, enthusing about dimensions way beyond 4, while I sat in my folding chair, stupefied. The math I knew measured what was static and predictable. It was unrelated to the invisible structural wonders of Heather's universe. With math as her lens, Heather glimpsed the beautiful mechanics of creation. I had missed out. It was as though my English teachers had used Shakespeare to illustrate the workings of grammar, making Macbeth into a progression of nouns, verbs, and dependent clauses. Grammar is only exciting in the bigger context of storytelling. No one ever showed me that math has bigger context, too. I felt stunted and sad. That evening at church, Emily, Gwyn, and I worked the cold table. I poured dressing on people's salads, Gwyn handed out fruit, Emily distributed the cookies. A man came through the food line, balancing his plate on a textbook. Studying over dinner, I asked, ladling ranch on his lettuce. Yup. Gwyn handed him an orange. Instead of offering him a cookie, Emily asked, "Is that calculus?" Yup. 20 people waited in line while Gwyn and I turned to listen. "Can you explain calculus to us? My daughter wants to know what it is." Without blinking, he said, "Calculus deals with the properties of derivatives and integrals of functions by methods originally based on the summation of infinitesimal differences." Or something like that. I copied out this definition because his words went in one ear and out the other. The three of us were struck dumb. This hungry man had simultaneously made calculus as ordinary as a Sunday dinner and utterly esoteric. We thanked him. He took an oatmeal cookie. Later, Gwyn and I called Heather. She, predictably, was delighted with Gwyn's question. She posited problems about walking on a mountain if you don't want your altitude to change, and measuring how steep a mountain is at different points. And if you're on a mountain and want to walk down as quickly as possible, which direction should you go? I closed my ears to Heather's meaning and heard sheer energy, as though she were describing a double-layer chocolate frosted cake and figuring out how exactly to dig in. Gwyn got it. Her eyes widened and her whole body expanded with wonder. I didn't. I was too absorbed in watching Gwyn. I'm Heather's children's godmother, commissioned from birth with nurturing their spiritual lives, and while I've been a good auntie, I've never ushered them into a relationship with mystery the way Heather did in that moment with Gwyn. I felt humbled. Later, Heather said, "It's all about the stories." Writing this, I began to grasp, just barely, that calculus helps us figure out the area under a curve. So much in our world stops and starts, builds up and decreases in complex and ever-changing relationships, and calculus measures these dynamics. I may be able to solve more sophisticated math problems than Gwyn, but my love and awe are stuck back in 4th grade. Gwyn has surpassed me in wonder. She's entered the temple of math where I've been unwilling or unable to go. Of course Gwen conceives of divinity simplistically. She's 10, she's still a concrete thinker, and goodness knows in the mind of a preteen, patriarchal images of God, influenced by Michelangelo and Santa Claus and Hollywood, take precedence over the wisdom of one liberal pastor and 2 contemplative moms. But God as father figure applies a static measurement to a dynamic process. It's looking at one inadequate grammatical possibility rather than the whole magnificent drama. Now I see that my job isn't to debunk Gwen's image of God or panic at her rejection of religious mystery. It's to keep a sparkle in my eye when telling her a good story. Heaven's not at the top of the mountain. Heaven is a hidden dimension of existence we can scarcely imagine that permeates the mountain, the empty space around it, the climb up it and the fall back down, the climber herself and the invisible forces that press her to the earth. Heaven is a young girl's rational sensibility and a homeless man's hunger for learning, and the bonds of lifelong friendship and the limitless dynamic of growth. Faith is heaven's calculus, and wonder is its gate. I had to do some research for that one too. Okay, this other one is called Flung Gold. I've tasted disillusion in prayer, that rare release from preoccupation into a clear, bright field. And so longing for this union pulses under every moment as Gwen has lost yet another precious Barbie shoe and my patience fails. As over the years I watch our home's windows film over with filth, as Emily and I hash out who will get the car when, I've known unity, however briefly, and once you've known it, who wouldn't want to escape this mess? So I go on retreat. A room of people also eager for silence surround me. The leader rings the bell. Sound resonates on my skin. I breathe. I release my thoughts for a fraction of a second, and then the tornado of my daily, chaotic, overwhelming concerns rushes back, spins me off until I might have just as well stayed at home for all the good prayer does me. 2 days of this. Practice matters, the retreat director assured us. The point is to bring a full heart to every moment. So on the 3rd afternoon, he invited us to do ordinary tasks around the center, dusting, vacuuming, washing windows, working on the garden, to practice presence. Completion wasn't as important as attention. The irony of having paid good money to retreat from such chores was not lost on me. It was March, glorious after too long a winter, so I chose the garden. A berm had been planted with a juga before all the sod had been killed off, resulting in a mess of root-bound flowers and grass. Our job was to evict the grass. I got to my knees and quickly realized the job was Sisyphusian. The berm was 50 feet long and 12 feet wide. The only reasonable solutions were to smother it with a black tarp and start over, or rototill, get rid of the sod and replant the ajuga. Pulling grass by hand was untenable. If the retreat center was serious about wanting a garden, all of our work would be undone. But I reminded myself the point of this exercise was not accomplishment. So I shuffled out a 2x2 foot patch and separated the small purple-leafed plants from the tangles of grass roots. I gathered the sod in my bucket and replanted flowers. My neck was warm, the soil was just waking up, and my mind, for the first time all weekend, cleared beautifully. On my knees, I became soil and roots and sun. Perhaps I'd been looking for just this, complete presence. My attention no longer yanked by Gwen's demands or Emily's health obsessions or tasks that really do need to be done, like getting meals on the table, but rather full and singular and absorbed. Within every instant, there's a place of bright surrender, and I had found it. Here was the black Midwestern soil. Here were abundant threaded roots. Here was the thud of grass landing in the plastic bucket, my in-breath and out, and the rustling of other gardeners who were giving up. The women asked for different jobs. The men decided to edge the garden with large rocks, allowing them to heave and haul and sweat and see results. Only I was left on the berm, surrendered to the assignment and the blossoming of time. An hour passed, then 2. I stood, removed my gloves, and ate a banana. I went inside to pee. When I returned, eager to enter that blissful absorption again, I realized my wedding ring was gone. Gone. My finger bare, and for how long? I raked my fingers through the dirt. I scoured the berm, but the ring was gone, along with my inner quiet and smug self-satisfaction about having made the meditation work. Divine union suddenly seemed stupid. I just wanted my ring, and I wanted all these meditators who couldn't focus on the assignment anyhow to help me find it, damn it, because that ring represented my very human union with Emily, which was already rich and reliable, and which I'd been ignoring on this retreat for the sake of my relentless spiritual ambition. When the group gathered again for our afternoon session, I tried to focus, but I just wanted my ring. So I retraced the steps of my earlier walk through the woods, scanning the packed leaves and muddy tracks, but seeing nothing, not the budding trees, nor the spring sun, nor my ring. I was a hound. I could think of nothing else. My body vibrated with distress. Emily and I had exchanged our bands at a gathering of friends and family from every corner of the country on a day so joyful we had littered the floor with spent Kleenex. Our rings were handcrafted by a local artist who was no longer in business. Thin gold streams in eternal circles, because our love is like water, a source of life. For 10 years, our rings had absorbed affection and joy and marital effort. My connection with Emily is so tremendous, I feel my heart sometimes shy away from it, like it's too bright, or like it's God passing through and I'd better turn my back or get burned. And somehow the enormity of the love I know is there but can't always feel was poured in gold into that small band which I toyed with constantly as though it could hold what I could not. Emily, I knew, felt the same way. 2 summers earlier, her ring slipped from her finger in the shallows of Lake Nokomis. She and Gwen immediately dug in the sand and then recruited a dozen kids to troll the area to no avail. After dinner, she rented a metal detector and we returned to the beach. Gwen was 4 and still hesitant to put her face under water, but got braver as the evening wore on and over 3 hours in the lake the following morning. Today, we credit that time of fruitless searching for teaching her how to swim. So Emily knew this sinking, irresponsible feeling, this vague sense of having betrayed our vows, this desperate seeking. When she returned the metal detector, the guy behind the desk asked if she wanted the name of a treasure hunter. A buddy of his was retired. He trolled Nokomis for jewelry and found over 160 rings. Emily called. Sure, he'd look. 2 days later, he phoned. He'd found it right where she'd lost it. No, he wouldn't take payment. He was always happy to reunite a ring with its owner. In that moment, at least, we knew the world was trustworthy, that the waters would hold everything we loved. The sun was about to dip below the tree line when the retreat session ended and a few people offered to help me look. Combing the grounds once more, I saw a glint at the top of the berm. My relief was immense. The ring must have flung off when I removed my gardening gloves. I still can't shake that afternoon's whiplash. 1 minute piercingly present to creation, and the next slapped by my inattention. What is true? When I picked that ring out of the dirt and slipped it back on my finger, I married Emily all over again. and through her, the incarnate world of gold and lust and distraction and home, where the spark of life is held and can be reliably found. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And this ends our reading portion of the evening. There are a few books up here. We invite you to stay and mingle, get to know each other and our lovely readers tonight. And if you're inclined, some of us sometimes head over to Sweeney's, which is a little bar with some decent food over on Dale, south of Selby. Next month's reading is October 12th. And our readings that evening will be Drolanda Larkins, Juliet Patterson, Danny Klecko, and Kirk Wilson. We hope you'll join us then. I'd like to suggest we have one more round of applause for our 4 readers tonight. Thank you for coming, and hope to see you next month.